Roland, as somebody who has been on the ground for this entire political process and through many presidential elections, I'm sure you've heard this as many times as I have as well. And that is black men expressing a level of high dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party. From what you've heard from the folks you've talked to on the ground, for the topics you do every day on Roland Martin is Unfiltered, what are their main issues with this party?
Well, the first thing is not just black men. Okay, if you look at the polling data, one of the reasons why President Biden was behind from January through July was because of softness among young people of color, African Americans, Latinos, and others. And I kept explaining to people, look at the data. When Black PAC, when the Black Voter Project had all of them on, look, those numbers were like low 50s. Okay, Democrats need to be in the high 80s, low 90s. And so you had dissatisfaction across the board. Young black men, young black women, and then of course Biden drops out. He chooses not to run for seek re-election. Then Vice President Kamala Harris, then all of a sudden he endorses her. Now all of a sudden you see the numbers going up, going from 59, 69, now 70. Look at polling data now, it's now going into the 80s. And so even among right now, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, one of the reasons why she's only up 1 or 2 points is because they still haven't got any higher. So her growth needs to be even higher among African Americans. And so that's black men and black women. But specifically, one of the reasons what you're seeing with black men, this goes back to 2012. Let me explain that. Obama runs in 2008. Huge black turnout. Well, by 2012, there was a 9-point gap between black men and black women. Black men felt Obama didn't deliver. Now you go to 2016, you see a 13-point gap. Then you go to 2020, now 2024. And so black men have been saying this. You have seen African Americans saying, hey, I'm not satisfied with what's going on. People got to understand about black people. The further you get away from the civil rights movement, the less black people self-identify. So I dare say, Jemele, I'm Gen X. And so I graduated in 1991. And I begin to see it then. Because what happens? You and I, of a generation, we went to college. Previous generation did not. You start going to college, you start making more money. You start thinking about other stuff that your parents never thought about. Our parents didn't think about the top 2 tax brackets. They weren't even close to it. When you talk about entrepreneurship, corporate taxes, all those different things. And so now the viewpoint begins to change. And so what Democrats have failed, white Democratic strategists, they've always talked to black people in this very broad way. You know what? One message, talk to them in October, hit some black churches, roll some commercials out on black radio, we're good. No, you now have to micro-target black people, which means spend more money, spend more time. And that has been one of the failures of the Democratic Party. They've not understood that the black electorate has changed, not the past 20 years. They've changed in the past 8 and the past 4 years.
Now, there have, among the many things that, I've certainly heard from black men on social media and just in conversations, is even though the Democratic Party has Wes Moore, they have Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist, they have Hakeem Jeffries, black men that are in positions of power and leadership within the Democratic Party, they still feel invisible. Where is the source of their invisibility coming from?
Well, first of all, black men have to accept the reality of patriarchy, misogyny, and paternalism. Okay? So you've had a history in America of men running stuff. Let's just be real clear. And so what you hear from some of these black men, and Terrence Woodbury, Cornell Belcher, you see it in their data. What some of them, and let me be clear, some of them, I think social media amplifies it way more than it is when you hear a lot of black girl magic, and when you hear the administration tout black female Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, black women appointed to the bench, when you look at in his administration. That is an issue. And I've heard this from older black men as well, that the administration not fully understanding you need trusted messengers who are coming out. I remember in 2016 being backstage at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation ALC dinner at the Phoenix Awards and telling Hillary Clinton, you got a problem. Why are y'all not sending out your black male surrogates? They're like, well, I remember Huma, backstage, it was Huma, Marlon Marshall, Secretary Clinton. She's like, well, you mean CBC? I'm like, no, I mean black businessmen and others. And I told her then, Secretary, I got a problem getting your surrogates on. They never understood it. And they were not understanding messengers. And so I've heard the exact same thing you've heard as well. Brothers need to deal with the reality that you've had black men in positions in a very long time. You're only seeing black women seen in these positions very recently. And so brothers need to get out of their feelings, because the reality is, even when you have black women in these places, they still are advocating on behalf of all black people. But you do have to recognize what a sentiment is. And so I think what you're dealing with, again, is it's communication. How are you reaching people? I go back to micro-targeting. And again, I just got off a couple of phone calls, and white Democratic strategists don't get it. And they won't listen to the black people who are on these campaigns, the black political strategists, the black pollsters who have been telling them, you cannot continue to message to all black people the same way. There are upperly mobile black men, college-educated black men who think differently than brothers who graduated from high school. Then you got brothers who did not. You can't assume that an upperly mobile black man is going to think the same as a brother who's been involved in the criminal justice system the very same way. And so you have to communicate differently. And unfortunately, they haven't understood that. They haven't learned that, which is one of the reasons why I think you look at Vice President Kamala Harris, how she is communicating in terms of these different spaces with traditional media outlets, non-traditional media outlets. I mean, look, she sat down and talked to Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. She hasn't done my show yet. Okay, so, and again, I'm not sitting there tripping about that. That's going to happen, but it's understanding that you have to communicate to audiences in a different way. She gets it. She just simply had a short runway. Unfortunately, a lot of other Democrats don't understand you have to dialogue with people. You got to go talk to people in non-election years. You got to be communicating to them about what you've done and what you've accomplished, because what you hear is, y'all ain't done crap. Well, they have, but if you haven't explained it to people, they don't live this every day like you and I do.
Yeah, and it also doesn't help that the Republican Party has the benefit of having multiple networks that parrot their message over and over and over
Yes.
again. Like, as much as people want to call MSNBC and CNN liberal, really not CNN as much as before, but they're not on message for the Democratic Party all the time, the way that Fox is, News, OWN. So when you're up against that kind of communication vehicle, do the Democrats, I mean, can they even begin to match that energy when it comes to doing this micro-targeting that you're talking about?
They can't unless they invest. INVEST. The problem with Democrats and progressives, they invest in entertainment, animation. Oh, let's make people laugh. I tell people all the time, you go back to when Air America Radio was created, and it was supposed to be the counter to Rush Limbaugh. It was basically a comedy network. I remember they flew me to New York to interview, and they were kind of like, well, we're just concerned. Can you be funny? And I was like, I'm sorry, aren't y'all supposed to be trying to compete against Rush Limbaugh? And I was like, what the hell are y'all doing? And I didn't get the job. It was just dumb. Now, I can be funny, but the goal ain't to tell jokes. The goal is to drive information. That is the problem. What you're describing, it is the problem, because what Democrats and progressives have not understood is, how do you fund an ecosystem? And so, yes, progressives go, oh, well, there's the New York Times, there's the Washington Post, there's the... No. First of all, their journalistic focus is different. No, you need folks who are intentional with messaging. Think Progress was a massive progressive platform. It came out of the Center for American Progress, and they separated on their own. They owed several $1 million. They shut down. Okay, conservatives would not let a major conservative outlet shut down. So when you look at Fox News, Salem Radio, when you look at Salem Communications, when you look at conservative talk radio, you look at the funding of digital platforms, PragerU, Daily Wire, Daily Signal, we can go on and on and on. They understand we're now living in a digital world. And so if progressives want to compete, they should be investing in these platforms. They're not even driving advertising dollars. And I'll just give you an example. It's not being self-serving, it's just a fact. I sat down with the folks at YouTube during the Democrat National Convention, because when they assign you your own person, when you hit a certain status, we're at about 1.42 million subscribers. And the guy tells us, we put you in the grouping with all of the other major progressive shows on YouTube. And I was like, okay. And he said, you have the highest average watch time per viewer than all of those shows. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, blew us away too. Now, if you knew that, and if you said, hey, here's an outlet that is speaking a language and is speaking to the issues that other people are not, don't you think we want to make sure they get funded? Nope. And that's the problem right there. What progressives don't understand is they are losing a digital information war. And they cannot get their messaging out because you need vehicles to break down your policies, to explain to people, and they're not doing it. Hopefully, when this election is over, and Vice President Kamala Harris is the 47th president, they will begin to understand that you can't go another 4, 3, 2, 1 year. You can't do that by playing the same old game. This is now a digital war. It's not an analog radio or a linear television. Listen, it's people, they ain't even watching MSNBC. They don't even give a damn about CNN, because the average age of those folks is anywhere from 65 to 70. You're in a different war, and they still have a 20th century, in some cases 19th century battle plan.
As you look at the consequences of this potential election, I always think it's important to remind people what the stakes are. For black men in particular, since this is a vulnerable spot in the Democratic Party, and I want people to be very clear about this, the majority of black men do support Kamala Harris, right?
Black men are the second largest voting bloc for Democrats behind black women. But the issue is not percentage. It's turnout.
Right.
It's turnout.
Yes. Turnout is the key.
I need everybody
so
watching and listening. Stop telling me about 80%, 85%, 90%. No, it's turnout. If you get 85% of 20,000 people and you get 85% of 35,000 people, that ain't the same. In the last 5 elections, Jemele, we've seen black turnout drop. And that we are now at the point of pre-Obama levels. That's a concern, because I need black people to understand, if we vote at our capacity, Jemele, we wipe out racists. I mean, okay, let me say it again. I don't think people understand this here. Harold Washington, when he ran for Chicago mayor, he got 85% of all eligible black voters. 85%. Andrew Young, when he ran for Congress, 70, I forgot, he got 73 to 75%. I keep saying our target is 70. If black people hit 70% of our capacity, we wipe out statewide races, congressional races. We win. The numbers don't lie, but we lose when it's 38, 42, 45, 50, 52. No, that ain't it. Texas has more eligible black voters than any state in America. Texas does. So what's our capacity? What are we voting at? And that's what I look at. I look at turnout. What are the numbers? And I keep saying to brothers and sisters, especially brothers, don't talk to me about what you care about if you're not understanding policy. Don't tell me about Trump when Jeff Sessions did not want, and he was on record, consent decrees. They did not want patterns and practices investigation. In 4 years of Donald Trump, there was one police patterns and practices investigation, and that was a small police force in Louisiana. Under Biden-Harris, there have been 12. 12. You can't tell me how many police officers and jail wardens and corrections officers were prosecuted and put in prison under Trump. There are dozens that have been put in prison under Biden-Harris. You can't show me, you have the Biden-Harris Department of Justice that has been prosecuting people for redlining, mortgage discrimination, dealing with home appraisals. Trump, oh, there's no systematic racism. They paid no attention. And so if you say, I care about criminal justice, I care about housing discrimination, I care about mortgage discrimination, let me remind y'all that one of the first bills the Republicans in the House took up when Trump became president was to get rid of an Obama-era rule that dealt with auto loan discrimination. It was one of the first. So everybody play that clip when Maxine said, reclaiming my time. That was a floor fight on that issue. That was one of the first bills they passed. So if you talking about Trump, let's deal with the facts of what they did when it came to black people, when it came to criminal justice and housing discrimination and all discrimination and Biden-Harris. Ain't even a conversation.
Do you, because this idea pops up in the media all the time, especially in recent elections, that there will be more black men voting for Donald Trump. How much do you believe that is true?
There will be. Okay, again, let me, and again, it's just, you have to go back to data. You have to go back to data. You're not dealing with the same black men in 2024 as you're dealing with in 2004. So, perfect example. Trump cut the corporate tax rate. Okay? It was 35, was cut to 20. Harris wants to take it back up to 28. I have talked to small business owners who are black. And they said, hey man, I talked to one guy in Houston, that was an additional $500,000 in his pocket. $500,000. I can't deny that. 2022, I'm in Georgia for Warnock. And I forgot, Jonesboro, Statesboro, I was somewhere. And we went to this coffee shop and a sister owned it. And I'm sitting interviewing with her and she says, listen, I get abortion and reproductive rights. She said, but I ain't having no kids. She said, what I care about is keeping this coffee shop in business. So I'm looking at Herschel Walker and Warnock when it comes to corporate taxes. Now, we all know Herschel Walker was an absolute idiot. But this sister was saying, I am making decisions based upon my business. And so we have to understand that that is a part of this conversation as well. It's also part of the conversation. Trump's whole tough guy. You hear brothers say, man, he gonna do what he say. Well, first of all, he sound like an idiot. But we have to recognize so that exists. Now, if I recognize that exists, now the question is, okay, how do I now counter that? I can't just say, man, you're full of shit, you're crazy, you're nuts, what are you doing? Even though that's the case. But I have to be laying out, all right, did this, did. What'd he do? See, I got to counter it that way. Now, there are going to be those fools who are emotional, who are misogynistic, who don't believe a woman can be president, those fools who fall for the strong man hype. But if you aren't articulating what you did compared to what he didn't do, you got the fools out there saying, man, I had money in my pocket when it comes to Trump. Yep. But who passed it? Democrats in the House. And second of all, you ain't getting stimmy checks again. Oh, by the way, the check that Biden-Harris gave you in 2021 was bigger than the one that Trump gave you in 2020. When the last time you actually heard any Democrats say how much the stimulus check was in 2021? When have you heard any Democrats say, hey, who extended unemployment insurance? Who extended the moratorium on evictions? Who extended the support for child care? So that was a reason. When you look at the data, I saw the report, it talked about how black wealth increased from 2019 to 2022. Yes, because of the stimulus. Because you had money coming from the federal government directly to African Americans. But ask those same people, what's going to happen when Republicans want to slash every single one of those programs? I'll wait. So I have to counter information, bad information, with real information and challenge people that way. But that requires messaging. That requires constant communication. That requires doing on the platforms. And so there has to be a strategic point of view. And the last point is this here. We have to recognize, Jemele, that we were being the biggest targets of misinformation. Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, they know this. The largest Black Lives Matter Facebook page in 2016 was a Russian troll farm. We know about these bots. We, black people, are being targeted. What candidate was targeted more by Russian troll farms in 2019 than Senator Kamala Harris? Why? It was all there. All this crap about her criminal justice record. She put millions of black men in prison. That was being driven by Russian troll farms. And guess what it did? It seeped into the deep recesses of black people's brain. And here you are 5 years later. No, she put black men in prison. No, she didn't. Hear the facts. Yes, she did. But being targeted. So if you're being targeted with disinformation, you got to have a counter. And that has been the weakness of Democrats and progressives.
And they also have to realize that there's a reason that you're being targeted. And what that reason is, right, is because they understand, Russia does not want her to be president. There is a reason why they don't. And so we have to ask the additional question about why that is. One thing I definitely noticed in terms of the difference between the 2020 election and the 2024 election is the presence of athletes. In 2020, or even going back to 2016, in 2016, you had LeBron James actually hosting a campaign fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. Yeah. In 2020,
he calls it a rally.
He calls it a rally, correct. Yes, he calls it a rally.
A massive rally,
A massive rally, yes. He did that in 2016. In 2020, obviously powered by the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, you saw athletes, black athletes in particular, at a level of activism that was, let's say, reminiscent of what we used to see during the civil rights movement.
Yep.
2024, crickets. What happened?
Okay. So it's hard. Okay, so it's very difficult to compare 2024 to the previous cycles, because this was the first time since 1968 a sitting president opted not to run. But the problem is, it's not even that. See, remember, LBJ announced early in 1968 he wasn't going to seek the re-election. Biden was running. Everything changed. Everything changed between June 27th and July 21st. And also, that goes back to strategy. That wasn't the strategy of the Biden campaign. And again, it's in the polling data. The Biden campaign, frankly, I don't know what the hell they were doing. I don't. They were not paying attention. They literally weren't. They were frankly on autopilot. They were simply making lots of assumptions. I can tell you, as somebody who was dealing with them, going back to January, going through, it was crazy. They weren't understanding surrogates. They were not trying to they were just, all right, we'll get to it. And it was just insane. And so what then happens is he chooses not to run. Now all of a sudden, she's a nominee. She has to put together in 6 weeks what normally you do in a year. And so this has been just a totally different campaign, anything that we haven't seen before in our lifetime, because of that decision of him not to seek re-election. And in many ways, her campaign is still trying to play catch up. They're still trying. And remember, you got two campaigns going. You got, frankly, the Biden team. Then you got the Harris team. And now you're trying to work these things out. And so all these things are happening. And I was hitting them up saying, where the surrogates? Like, what's up? And then even when the HBCU football greats, when they dropped their announcement of endorsements, I immediately went, I got a heads up the night before. I said, okay, great. Who's doing interviews? They said, oh, none of them doing interviews. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. Y'all came up with this big ass list of HBCU greats and not one doing any media interviews? I was like, that's dumb. And I still don't understand it. And I still haven't seen one. And I've been trying to get a couple on my show, but they've been busy. So it's been this weird, this has just been a weird campaign, how it's shaken out. But I think what you just described, a lot of that really is just what we saw just with this just total crazy campaign, but it makes no sense whatsoever. But even if you go beyond sports, if you start talking about music, entertainment, remember in the late stages, LeBron did that rally with Hillary Clinton in Ohio. Then Jay-Z and Beyonce did that massive rally with her in Philadelphia. You actually saw other folks out there as surrogates doing events on the campaign trail. And so I've been asking, okay, where they at? This is me. It's 35 days. Like, days are running out. So to me, where are the multiple events of where's Kerry Washington going to be? Where's John Legend going to be? Where's this, like what's going on? And it's just been a totally just weird campaign, because that month changed everything. And a lot of people also didn't realize the campaign was broke. When I say fundraising stopped, fundraising stopped. So this has been totally just disjointed because of what happened between June 27th and July 21st. That changed everything.
So, Roland, what is, can I get this on record? What is your election prediction? Not just in terms of who you believe will be able to win, but what should Americans prepare themselves for? Because by all intents and purposes, given the people Donald Trump already has in place, and these, and what we know the electorate college to be, what should Americans prepare themselves for? What is your election prediction?
I think first, I do think she wins. I'm going to use a boxing analogy. If the fight's November 5th, and you're training, you don't peak on October 1st. Like, it killed me, all these people, if the election was held tomorrow, Trump will win. Fool, it ain't tomorrow. So why you even having that conversation? And so I think as you see it build, again, when I look at numbers, she is steadily increasing her lead among Latinos, young blacks, young black women. Those numbers are increasing, holding steady in critical places when it comes to white voters. But again, everything comes down to turnout. And so I think I think she will win. It will not be by a large margin, but like I tell everybody, I don't give a damn about 300 electoral college votes. All you need is 270. So if my Texans win a game by 1 or 30 points, I don't give a damn as long as you win the doggone game. So I think she wins. But what we have to understand is that Trump loses, these MAGA folks ain't going nowhere. They're going to be even more pissed off, even more emboldened. And we have to understand that they were running for school board. Moms for Liberty took over a whole bunch of local school boards that were majority black. You can see what's happening on the state level. You've got critical Supreme Court races. If you are concerned about the abortion decision in Texas, guess what? Two or three of those justices are on the ballot. Oh, you're concerned about the decisions in Florida? 2 of those Supreme Court justices are on the ballot in Florida. There's Supreme Court justices on the ballot in Ohio who overruled the people when it came to gerrymandering. And so we got to understand that these MAGA people are looking at the control on the state level. You have too many of these these legislatures. Republicans have a supermajority. You got to break that supermajority. So you may not be able to win the House, you may not be able to win the Senate, but if you break the supermajority, then they're forced to negotiate with the other party. So we have to understand they ain't going anywhere. So people have to stop acting like, oh, well, Harris wins, we're good. No, the question is, will it be a Democratically controlled House or Republican controlled House? Will the Republicans take control of the Senate? Okay, Tester is down 5 or 6 points in Montana. Sherrod Brown has to win in Ohio. You got to win Arizona. You got to win Nevada. West Virginia's already gone because Manchin chose not to seek re-election. Justice is going to win. But guess what? You could have an upset in Florida with Powell over Scott. Okay. Now, same thing could happen in Texas. Now, Colin Allred, I'm sorry. I don't understand. I've been texting the brother since March, say, hey, I'll come bring my show there. How can I help? I ain't heard from him at all. So I don't even know he's even talking to black people down there. So I don't know what's going on there. And I'm just being straight up. I ain't got a problem. I'm like, bruh, I hit you direct. What's up? We're in October. What's up? You need black people to vote in Texas if you want to beat Ted Cruz. Where you at? So so you have opportunities here. So people have to stop thinking it goes beyond the presidential race. The question is, if you don't hold the Senate, guess what? Can't pick Supreme Court justices. Republicans can hold you up. Can't pick federal judges. And so the Senate matters as well. And so you got to win Ohio. You got to win Nevada. You got to win Arizona. You're going to lose West Virginia. If you lose Montana, you got to offset that with a pickup in Florida or Texas. And so people have to understand that when you're talking about politics, it's chess. You're talking about politics, all these pieces are interconnected. So I need people to realize that the election is the end of one process and the beginning of another. So all of these groups, all of your group chats and how you mobilize and organize people to vote, I need y'all to keep that stuff in place so when the election is over, we then can now process to force these people to do what they said they were going to do. That has been one of our greatest mistakes, Jemele. We have so focused on elections and organizing and mobilizing that we forget how do we stay connected to now show up at City Hall and county government and the school district and the state legislature to then force the folks to get done what we want them to do. And so that's what I'm encouraging people to understand. If MAGA ain't going anywhere, we can't go anywhere. And then we must take the fight to them. And, as those Tuskegee Airmen, they said, to the last man, to the last hour, to the last minute, to the last second, we fight, we fight, we fight. That has to be our mentality.
So, how long do you think it's going to be before we know who's actually the president?
I think we'll know by that Thursday.
Okay.
You look at the data that night. Obviously, how you count is critical. The states change their laws when you can start counting. And some states where you can count your absentee ballots beforehand, so by 7 o'clock, by 7:01, those are already counted. Well, some of these places say, oh no, you can't count anything till all the polls close. And so I don't think we're going to. I don't think we're going to see a repeat even in 2020. I don't think we're going to see that. I think we'll know a lot sooner. But again, to everybody watching and listening, at the end of the day, it's turnout. And then I tell them, if you don't vote, shut the hell up. If you don't vote, I don't want to hear your bitching and moaning about this, that, and the other. I saw this MSNBC video, and they're talking to these young sisters. Oh, I'm thinking about sitting this out. So you got all that mouth on issues, but then you're gonna sit your ass at home? I don't. That's just illogical to me. I just don't. That makes no sense to me. Every person watching and listening should say, what are the 3 things I care about? 3 things that you care about. And then you sit down and say, where does Trump stand on those 3 things? And where does Harris stand on those 3 things? Or pick 5 or pick 7 or whatever. But you got to do that. And same thing. You got to be in the game. Because guess what? Somebody else who opposes you, they already have their plan when it comes to voting. They're very clear. They've called their friends and church members and neighbors. And they're going to do that. We have to do the exact same thing. And stop listening to all these dumbasses out here who have doctors in front of their name, or some of these fake YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter doctors telling you, you don't get nothing for your vote. That's a damn lie. It's an absolute lie. Because if you go to an HBCU, I bet you don't mind the $17 billion schools have gotten under Biden and Harris versus you got under Trump. Yeah, I bet when it comes to any number of issues, yeah, the vote does matter. And so anybody who tells you, and if they look like us, man, that vote and stuff don't matter, they are a damn lie. And you should ignore and run from any fool who says that, because it matters on the federal, state, county, school district, city level. It matters top to bottom who you vote for and who's in power. Because trust me, a progressive DA that cares about people as opposed to lock them up cares. It was a Republican DA who prosecuted Marcel Williams. It was a Democratic DA who said there was something wrong with this prosecution. And it was a Republican Attorney General, a Republican governor, a Republican Missouri Supreme Court, and a Republican Supreme Court that said, put that man to death. So and by the way, it was 3 Democratic appointed Supreme Court justices who said we should stay this man's execution. Now you tell me, if voting don't matter, how is it that the black DA in St. Louis County and the 3 blacks on the 3 democratically appointed justices of the Supreme Court say don't put this man to death? It was all Republican elected folks who said he got to go, and that's why he is dead. Last point, there was 3 federal executions in 60 years. 3. Donald Trump put 13 people to death in 6 months. Obama, Biden, 0 federal executions. Biden, Harris, 0 federal executions. 3 federal executions in 60 years. Trump put 13 people to death in 6 months. Tell me elections don't matter.